In my opinion, Jesse Enkamp can make some great videos, but he often says things that are deliberately misleading for clickbait purposes, or he'll say things that are terribly misinformed, so I hate it when he's actually right. His recent video about play in training is very good, and I intended to cover this topic myself at some point. Instead, I recommend that you watch Jesse's video, but here I just want to frame it with some more context and add a couple of points of my own. He called it Why Sparring is Dead.
Everyone thinks sparring is essential in martial arts, but the world's greatest fighters have stopped doing it. Don't save sparring for last. Rather, try to do it at the beginning of your training session.
Just ignore the clickbait title. He's not saying that sparring isn't necessary. However, taking certain approaches to sparring can be counterproductive, and we learn better through what is essentially play, but sparring itself is play. And play is our built-in self-teaching mechanism that has evolved over millions of years and is displayed by many different species, which Jesse explains very well. So I do agree with much of the content of the video. And these ideas apply equally to martial arts training and any other kind of police training or military or security or whatever. However, training methods in police academies typically involve demonstrating techniques which are then drilled by the students, and at some point they are tested to replicate the movements that were demonstrated to them, and there's a pass or fail, and it can be a stressful experience. And even the training before the testing itself is designed to be strict, very serious, and not fun at all. There's no play, there's no experimentation with the methods they've been shown. They're just expected to repeat it back verbatim, and if they don't, they fail. They're given a solution without ever having experienced the problem. When people are permitted to play and spar and mess around, they eventually encounter their own problems and they'll be motivated to find a solution for these problems. When you show a solution in the form of a technique or tactic, they'll be much more receptive than if you demonstrated that technique to them without any context at all. Play is fun because we literally evolved to learn that way. It is the most effective way to absorb and internalize information. The conventional wisdom is that fighting and combat is scary and stressful, so the training should be as well. But it's the opposite. When training is stressful, we learn less. Play allows us to prepare better for the real thing, which might be a stressful event, but it'll be far less stressful the more we prepare and mentally prime ourselves for that experience. It's easier to deal with something when you know what to expect. Experimenting when we train, trying different approaches, using creativity and finding our own solutions is part of this. Setting up a training environment that permits play and experimentation within parameters relevant to intended training outcomes is how we achieve the best results. Martial arts training is experiential. There are many things which cannot be explained or taught explicitly because they're too complex and often involve a lot of things that are happening on a subconscious level. To use a different example, you can teach people different swimming strokes by explaining the movements and having them repeat it, but they will not be able to swim until they get in the water and experience the physical sensation of being in the water and moving around in it, and fighting is the same. Instead, we put people through police academies by demonstrating isolated techniques without context. We don't let them spar, we don't let them play. Finally, we have them imitate the movements for examination under stress. It's all backwards. One final point about Jesse's video, there's something he missed. It's important to occasionally experience stress, not to learn techniques, but to learn about ourselves and how we perform under that stress so that we can make adjustments to our mindset and develop resilience and self-knowledge. You should understand how far you can go, at what point you give up, at what point you mentally break, how you respond to pain or the feeling of hopelessness. These are all areas we can strengthen ourselves against by experiencing that failure and carefully examining our response to it. Failure is an essential part of training, and we should have a training environment where we aren't afraid to fail. There is a point of diminishing return where you can do more harm than good, and traditionally we often got that wrong. Sparring too hard, causing too much damage in training instead of in the ring or in reality where it needs to count. Muay Thai fighters were given as an example of fighters who spar very lightly in Jesse's video, but they're fighting every weekend, so I don't think that example helps us very much. They learn a lot from actually fighting full contact once a week. Not everyone is doing that, so they would benefit from occasionally sparring harder or full contact competition. Overall, I'm really glad that Jesse has raised this concept of play and training in a way that minimizes damage and maximizes learning. And he has a popular channel, so hopefully this leads to more effective training methods becoming more common in the real world.